Let's hit some mood trackers because there are moods rapidly evolving across the landscape of college football. And we got to start with Texas. The Texas mood has been updated to "In KC We Trust." I trust that a lot of you saw the Arkansas game. Not even going to call it an Arkansas-Texas game because, to be honest with you, Texas did not have a whole lot of choice with how that outcome came to be. But now, what you also saw, if you tuned in through the duration, is a quarterback change, which, of course, was what we were fearful of in the latter portion of Texas fall camp. We saw that there was no clear leader. That was made obvious because Steve Sarkisian himself said so. And so it was Hudson Card and it was Casey Thompson. And finally, you have a scrimmage where Card looks a little bit better. Chip Brown over at Horns 24/7 shared some pretty interesting information with his insiders and members over there earlier today that indicated maybe that coincided with Casey Thompson showing up a couple minutes late for some things. And when it's a battle of inches, that goes a long way in determining the outcome. Whatever determined the outcome, Sark picks Hudson Card as a starting quarterback. And that was all well and good. But remember what we said on the show at the time, which is ringing very true now. I said, this is not a Texas team that is talented enough to just pick their quarterback and then take off and get to cruising altitude at 38,000 feet within 10 minutes. It's going to be bumpy. They're just not there yet, obviously. That's why they have a brand new coaching staff. And the problem therein lies, because when you had two quarterbacks so hotly contesting each other in fall camp, it's inevitable that you have a little division within your locker room. Sometimes it can be healthy, but you got how many guys? You got over 100 guys in there. I mean, you got 100 different sets of eyeballs. They're not all seeing it the way you do. You better believe there were some folks that said, man, Coach picked Hudson Card. I think Casey Thompson. I think he's our leader. I think he's our guy. Now, Sark made the best decision he knew how to with the information at hand. But what we said is the second the first wheel gets wobbly, there's probably going to be a change. And lo and behold, the wheels got wobbly Saturday night in Fayetteville, and now we've seen a change. And Casey Thompson, in case you've missed it, has been announced as the starting quarterback for Rice this Saturday. Rule number 1 on the show, don't lose to food. Rule number 2, see rule number 1. And so I believe Casey Thompson is going to have a good game Saturday. Now, the reason the Texas mood has shifted to "In Casey We Trust" is because there's no other option. That's about it. But I'll tell you something else. Casey Thompson is liked by a lot of the Texas fan base, and if you were indifferent on him, then I think you ought to go over there and take a look at Chip Brown's insider report over on Horns 24/7 because he talked a lot about the attitude and had some direct quotes from Casey Thompson. And here's the way I interpreted it, and the way a lot of you at Texas interpreted it. It was believed that if Hudson Card won that job, there was a strong likelihood that Casey Thompson was going to transfer. Sark himself was worried about that. And when it happened, I was reading Chip Brown's report. I'm paraphrasing. Go read it in its entirety if you want to over on horns247.com. He said Casey Thompson was very distraught. He just kind of cut himself off from the world for a couple of days. But then he decided, I'm going to stick it out. I'm going to go work my tail off. I'm going to try and do it on my own and prove to everyone that I deserve this job. I'm going to keep myself ready. And so he was ready. When his number got called Saturday night, he was ready. And a lot of people have observed that inside the program. It makes you want to root for a guy like that because he did not hit the exit door. He didn't hit the dump button immediately. And so for those two reasons, I think it's "In Casey We Trust" right now with Texas Longhorn fans. Again, no one expects to win a national title out there this year, but they want to see evidence from Steve Sarkisian and his organization, at least, or his version of the Texas organization, that there's something to build in and buy into in the future. And you can start to do that with nailing down who the starting quarterback is going to be for the rest of the year and not make it a week-to-week sort of deal. Up in Columbus, Ohio, yeah, that's it. That's my impression of a lot of my Ohio State buddies this week. The Ohio State fan mood tracker has shifted to one word: defensive. And there is a double entendre there, obviously, because they were anything but that. Were the Ohio State Buckeyes against Oregon Saturday? I was in an unair-conditioned Iowa State press box. Yes, guys, I'm out there in the trenches. I mean, I'm fighting the battle out there in 95-degree temperatures for all of us. I'm doing it for you so you don't have to sweat through your shirts. But I was watching the Oregon-Ohio State game on a press box TV, and I'm watching and I'm saying, is that a replay? No. That looks just like a play that gashed Ohio State a drive before. They just ran it again. Oh, look, there they go again. I can't tell you. It felt like I watched a 120-yard chunk plays on the ground ripped off by C.J. Verdell. Well, it wasn't all that far from reality. And so we read you on the Tuesday night edition of Late Kick Live several quotes from Ryan Day about needing to overhaul a lot of things about the Ohio State defense. Very uncommon language, to be blunt, about a program that is as elite in stature as Ohio State is at this point in a season. You can talk that way in spring. You can talk that way in fall camp. You rarely hear head coaches be that drastic in their language in a season. But it's merited. It is absolutely warranted. So the focal point this week, and they're playing, I think, Tulsa this week. The focal point this week for Ohio State fans has been tracking every practice update. They want to know who's going to be the coordinator there the rest of the year. And more importantly, forget titles and forget, plaques on the desk. Who's calling the plays? And a lot of that is shrouded in secrecy. I mean, officially, no changes have been made. I would bet my bottom dollar changes have been made. I don't know exactly what they are, but everyone wants to know if things are going to change. And so with every fresh practice report, we tried something new today. Are we working on something new today? Well, in my time observing this game, I can tell you when fundamental changes are being made, it is never adding complexity to anything. It is stripping things out, and it is making it as simple as possible. It is removing the pen from your hand and inserting a red crayon. And if that's what it takes to get a competent defensive product on the field that will absolutely get picked apart down the road by more elite offensive products, so be it. Because if Ryan Day is looking at things and he's asking, well, out of the two alternatives, what do I prefer? People looking lost or people doing their job and someone just eventually figuring us out several series into the game? I think he's going to take the latter. You can at least stomach the latter. I can't stomach the former. And so it's defensive right now. Because Ohio State fans are asking a question that's normally inverted. Normally, you watch a team that has a really good defense and they can't score enough. And so you ask, man, are we going to waste a great defense this year because we can't score enough? It's the total opposite. And I'm not saying they're elite offensively yet there, but they have a ceiling of elite production offensively. They can score. Ohio State can score on their good days. They're asking, does it matter right now? Are we going to be able to stop anyone? Because, if Minnesota moved it on us, and then certainly Oregon moved it on us, looking down the road, and there's some teams that in a former life I would expect us to house pretty comfortably that are probably going to be able to make us uncomfortable, kind of like the Indiana game last year, because they're going to be able to score on us. And that is a bad place to be. That's a bad feeling to have in the pit of your stomach. The total opposite of that is the way our Arkansas friends are feeling. And we've had a ton of Arkansas folks watching the show the past week, and I appreciate it. I've done some radio in Little Rock this month, and I've talked about the things that I love about college football, and I'm not going to beat this to death again, but anytime you watch a program get the culture fit, you got to stand up and applaud it. If you love the sport as a whole, then there's no way that you can dislike what's happening at Arkansas with Sam Pittman. And if you're unfamiliar, if you're just kind of a casual fan, and maybe you pull for your program, and maybe you're a Washington State fan, and you just don't know a lot about Arkansas, for the good of the sport, I would encourage you to root for Arkansas. Because if that template is proven on a national level to work, then you'll have far more programs out there take a second and very hard look at their own hiring practices. I'm looking in Los Angeles, California as we speak, through the camera, of course, and understand that you can't have the same 5 or 6 list of questions no matter where you're trying to hire. You got to have culture as part of it. Arkansas got it figured out. So anyway, we beat that drum a lot Sunday and Tuesday. The mood tracker at Arkansas. I don't know how popular Jason Mraz would ever be in Arkansas. However, he had a song one time that I was listening to last night. That's why it's stuck in my head. And it's called Make It Mine. Well, if I'm an Arkansas fan, my mood is make it ours. You know how the sport is shaped. You know how the very conference you reside in is shaped. You know how the division in the conference you reside in is shaped. It doesn't really matter how good you become. No one's handing you anything. No preseason magazine is ever going to coronate you a favorite of anything. Vegas odds makers aren't going to do it. Certainly media is not going to do it. Every game, even if you ultimately go on to win it, is going to begin with your back proverbially against the wall just like last week, and even though you went on to skull drag someone, you had to prove everyone wrong in doing it. Well, the point is, if you're waiting for the crowd that didn't expect you to be able to do that to ever hand you any kind of accolade, you're going to be waiting until you're in your grave. So don't wait. Just make it yours. Sam Pittman's got that attitude. I can promise you the rest of the program has that attitude, and I would venture to think the fan base will not have a very hard time at all adopting that attitude. The reason is because Sam Pittman is one of them. He is one of you guys. And so you all think the same way, and you should be thinking the same way. I cannot wait to watch several more of those patented Trey Biddy walk and talks outside of Reynolds Razorback Stadium in the future, where you guys were, of course, an underdog, and then you end up beating someone, and there's Trey Biddy just walking around, selfie stick in hand, empty stadium, saying, well, we did it again. You got to pause, look around for effect. That's only Trey Biddy can do. Yep, we got him. I can't tell you how many times I've watched him doubt us, and we got him again tonight. I love the walk and talks. Trey Biddy's walk and talks are great. Make it ours. That's it. Make it ours. Remember at the beginning of the year when I was telling you the difference between rankings and predictions and ratings? I need to have a little soliloquy on the JP poll before we go off the air. I mean, reminder there. There were a lot of people who didn't expect anything from Arkansas this year because they thought they weren't a good team. But there was a much bigger crowd out there that probably thought Arkansas was a decent team, but they thought the schedule was insurmountable. And I just made the point that I want to reiterate before we move on. Yes, Arkansas has got a brutally difficult schedule. You don't play a schedule every week. Arkansas didn't play their schedule last week. They played Texas. Texas was one layer of what you thought made this season non-winnable for Arkansas, but then they won the game. So that's one domino down that you didn't think they could knock down. This week, they got Georgia Southern. Arkansas is not talented enough to overlook anyone. I pray they don't overlook Georgia Southern. It's the last program at that level you want to be overlooking. But then they're going to play A&M in Dallas. We are giving strong consideration to taking the Renaissance Tour to Dallas, Texas for that game, by the way. Decisions to be made this weekend. Take care of business first. People are going to look at A&M, Haynes King or not. They're going to look at him and say, that's going to be tough. Ooh, 50-50 at best, maybe even 40-60. But then if they win that one, you'll have two dominoes down. Then it really gets thick. Then you have no chance, right? No chance whatsoever of going into Athens. And then the week after that at Ole Miss, by the way, if you count the trip to Dallas, their third week on the road in a row, which never happens unless you're an FCS program. The point being, you don't look at a schedule in totality. You look at weeks. And in a week, I did check, even Arkansas just has to play one team per week. They'll be okay. You maintain and bottle up the energy and passion and attitude they played with last week, they'll be okay. They'll have a shot to compete in almost every game they play. That's it. Those are the only mood trackers we have to update. But I will tell you this. Looking at this weekend's slate, I would venture to think some more moods are going to have to be updated this time next week.